Hello and welcome to a special edition of Face to Face. Today we have the pleasure to have with us in the studio Ismail Haniyeh, head of the political bureau of the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas. Now his visit here to the Islamic Republic comes at a time of extreme tensions in the occupied territories, including in the Gaza Strip. Iran has hailed the recent victories made by Palestinian resistance groups in the occupied territories, saying that the resistance front is changing the balance of power on the global stage. And we're here to find out how that is happening. Ismail Haniyeh, welcome to the program.
أهلا وسهلا بك.
شكرا لك أستاذ هنية.
Looking at this past few days, we've seen leaders of the two main Palestinian resistance groups to be received by the Islamic Republic, and they have held talks with senior Iranian leaders, including Iran's leader. Is it a coincidence that both you and Mr. Nakhala were here in the capital, Tehran?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بداية أنا أعبر عن سعادتي بزيارة للجمهورية الإسلامية في إيران.
In the name of God the Almighty, the Most Merciful, first of all, I would like to express my joy of being here in the Islamic Republic of Iran and to be with you on the show. Of course, our meetings with the officials in Iran have welcomed and introduced us to many issues, and to see that we have joint issues that are very significant. There is the growing resistance in Palestine. Our presence here today with our brother in Islamic Jihad, Mr. Ziad Nakhala, is in context of being part of the logistics of a meeting and a visit to the Islamic Republic of Iran together as our brothers and the delegation of the Islamic Jihad. I can say that this presence for us both at the same time has many results, good results, because we had bilateral meetings between us and the Islamic Jihad movement with other officials, and has given us the opportunity to be able to talk and discuss many of the files that are very significant with our brothers also in the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Let's talk about the recent 5-day war that was exercised and executed by the Zionist enemy. Now, we all know that this ended with the victory of the Palestinian resistance, so in that sense, congratulations. However, what was more remarkable about the way that the Palestinian resistance put up a front was the display of unity that occurred by the different resistance groups. Do you agree that this unity in the resistance camp is actually what the Zionist enemy fears the most?
نعم في البداية دعني.
Yes, in the beginning, allow me first of all to note that this battle that was ongoing in Gaza and what the Zionist enemy had committed from this crime, the crime of assassinating a group of our brothers in Nasrallah, Al-Quds, and of our brothers in Islamic Jihad, and many also their families, full family was martyred along with them. And there were also several civilians that had fallen martyrs, and they also targeted those leaders in their homes, in their residential areas. Therefore, it is the enemy that began this aggression, this backstabbing act, which came in a time when there was a truce and a ceasefire, which was previous, and still the enemy did not respect any sort of agreement or truce and committed this assassination. Of course, there needs to be a retaliation against such a crime, and it needs to be the retaliation needs to reach all areas, and the joint operation room for in Gaza, where we see all the Palestinian resistance factions, had held an urgent meeting and also stressed the main lines and principles. And our brothers in Saraya al-Quds, they were at the forefront, and they went through with the direct implementation of the operation and the retaliation, which continued for 5 days. But there was continuous cooperation and coordination on the grounds, on the front lines, especially with the Kata'ib of the brigades of Azz-ad-Din al-Qassam and Saraya al-Quds brigades. And we also in Hamas were able to also present all that we can, and we are ready to face this enemy, and we can give everything that al-Qassam brigades has in order, whether the media support or the political support, in order to support this battle. And we also were there to give support and backing to our brothers in Saraya al-Quds. And I can say that the enemy, the Zionist enemy, in essence also here's the resistance itself. And when the resistance is in unity, then therefore their calculations are much different. And what happened in the battle of avenging the free, I can say, was also very heavy on the enemy, and they had a very deep calculations on the front line, and the resistance was able to draw on the face of the Zionists and to stress on them that the blood of the martyrs will not be in vain, and we will always avenge and retaliate for the sake of our leaders, and the enemy will pay the price for every crime that they commit, especially when they target and they assassinate the leaders of the resistance, whether in Gaza or even in Jenin or in the West Bank or anywhere else.
There's a very interesting development that has happened, and that is that we're seeing the Israeli regime to be on the back foot. It has retreated. It's not as powerful as before. Certain development that indicated that with the most recent military drills that they had. And the premise of that was, what if they were attacked from all directions by the different resistance groups? If the Israeli regime forays into another military adventure, are we looking at that happening? Different resistance groups all at once, unified, responding and retaliating to the Israeli regime?
I agree with you, our dear friend, that the enemy, the Zionist enemy, is today in their most disadvantageous stance and state. And first of all, the level of rifts and differences in the Israeli society, even on the political level, the military level, is a deep polarized rift. It's a true rift, and among all the political factions. And whether we have the extremists on one side, the nationalistic or the extremists leftists on one side, and those who even have differences when it comes to the existence and the identity of this entity. And we see hundreds of thousands of the protesters that came out to protest several issues which we see that they are talking about, and the change of laws also in this entity. This level of division is also something that is an alarm for them, that there could be even confrontations between them, that there could be a civil war within the Israeli society. And these statements were very obvious from the Israeli officials, and this shows the extent of the rift among the Israelis and within the Zionist entity. And there is even the fact that there is a rift within the system, the political system in the Zionist entity. And other indicator is that there they are also encompassed by the resistance in Gaza, which is the fortress of the resistance, the Palestinian people, which continue also in a very close front. And they see the soldiers, they see the settlers, whether it is in Al-Quds, those who are the defenders of Al-Aqsa, the resistance, the Lebanese resistance, Hezbollah, Iran also in everything that represents as an Islamic state and a regional force, and the fact that it also faces this Zionist plot against the region, and therefore it is surrounded from all sides. And the third issue, that there is a concern within the Israeli Zionist entity, that there is an existential fear for their future, the so-called national security, that there is 60% of the Israeli society that feels concerned about the existence of their entity. They do not feel secure, they do not feel safe, and they are incapable of adapting to the strategic changes that are surrounding this entity. And therefore, we believe that the occupation force today is in one of its most worst cases. And even at the regional level, the region is changing. It is rehabilitating or becoming rebuilt in a different way. Even at the international level, the world is being shaped in a way that would not have a place for the Zionist entity, a place in the region or the world. And therefore, we are following up and studying deeply what is happening in the depth of the Zionist entity, and hope, God willing, we will see that everything that will happen will be for the benefit of the nation.
Indeed, as you mentioned, the forces are not only within Israel falling apart. Divisions have been cited within the far-right cabinet, within the Israeli society. And as you mentioned, the protests that are going on at this point, approaching almost 6 months. At the same time, you have the resistance groups unified, who are obviously ready for any resistance in the form of retaliation. Would you say that Israel is on its last leg, given that it's rupturing from within while it's trying to fight the outside forces, such as the resistance groups, which pose obviously the biggest threat to it?
I believe that the decision to go to war for the Israelis is no longer an easy issue for this regime. And it is the time when the Israelis would any time decide to launch a war has ended against the Palestinian people. It is the time when Israel decides to launch an aggression against Lebanon also has ended. Of course, the calculations for war for the Israelis has changed. It is no longer easy in the way that it was in the past. And you can see this change that has occurred for the Israeli army. In the 80s, it was in the heart of Beirut. And today, the Israeli enemy has also thinks 10 times before they can even come to close to the border of Lebanon, and even the border now of Gaza, which is today a very strong front. And there were 5 wars that were launched against Gaza, but they are incapable of taking a decision of launching a ground invasion as they had in the past, and their entrance would be very much costly. And when they decided and recently to take the border of Gaza, which reached around 1,000 kilometers or less more, they paid 62 killed soldiers in 2014, and therefore the calculations of a war, it's no longer the same for the Israelis. It's no longer easy, or on the contrary, even the maneuvers, the military drills that the Israeli enemy launches, they only say that they want to face a war from all fronts, is actually only maneuvers for defense. They are extremely afraid. These are maneuvers for the sake of defense. They cannot confront one side of resistance, so they cannot confront more than one front.
Okay, we're going to head for a quick break right now, but we'll return back to our conversation with you, Esmail Hania. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. Okay, what you're seeing right now is the most recent meeting that has taken place between Iran's leader and Esmail Hania. In case you're just joining us, head of the political bureau of the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, who came to Tehran and is on his second day here. And he has met with high-ranking Iranian officials, including Iran's leader, as you're seeing right now, also Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi. The developments coming out of the meeting with Iran's leader is of note. There's some observations that Iran's leader made and pointed out, which we will ask Esmail Hania about that, regarding the faithful and young generation of Palestinians who obviously are playing a very active role when it comes to the resistance front. But what is happening there on your screens was the most recent meeting that Esmail Hania, who's with us right now in the studio, took place with Iran's leader. And it's of note because you had the Islamic Jihad leader also here in the capital, Tehran, both of which were received by Iranian high-ranking officials. And that obviously, needless to say, shows how much Iran has been supportive of the Palestinian cause. And the relationship between Iran and resistance groups always is enhanced and moves as the tide is turning against the Zionist regime, in order to make sure that Iran's support is always clear and evident and very colorful. Now, in terms of the meeting that you had with Iran's leader, Esmail Hania, he made an important observation that he pointed to, and that was about the young and the faithful generation of the Palestinians who really displayed their will and their strong effort and collective zeal when it came to fighting the Zionist enemy. The question that I have is, how do you see this infusion of young energy into the Palestinian resistance?
الشباب في فلسطين هم وقود الثورة والانتفاضة، وهم السواعد القوية الرامية.
They are actually the main essence of the resistance. They are the arms of the resistance. They are part and parcel of the resistance in facing the Zionist and Israeli occupation force. In the last two wars, we had Intifada, we had Al-Aqsa Intifada, and which also who was ready and there to protest and launch this Intifada? It was the youth within the Zionist entity, and this was a very significant tactic. Today, when we see the surveys that are being launched by the strategic centers in Palestine, we see that 85% of the Palestinian people are with the choice of resistance, and we see that the greatest percentage of those who underwent this survey were the youth, and we see these in the elections in the universities in Palestine. We see that the student elections are mainly for the forces of resistance. Those are the youth of Palestine. Therefore, we believe that the resistance is also governed by the youth of Palestine. They have the ability to rejuvenate and regenerate this resistance. They do not fear the occupation force, and they face it with all faith and everywhere. And we can see, for example, on the West Bank, this great West Bank, which has suffered very tough and difficult years, and we see that it continues to suffer from the Israeli policy policies and the continuous building of settlement building, and the Israelis that are trying to take control of more land in the West Bank. And still, the West Bank today has blown in the face of this enemy from all these operations, these resistance operations. We say every day. Youth, young men, and even leaders, even the young men who have held the guns in their hands, even when the guns have no ammunition, still they held the guns in order to attempt to defend their land, and they are the ones who will be drawing the future, and they are the ones who will be drawing the roadmap for our people who are resilient, who are great, who only seek liberty and freedom.
Look at the meeting that you had with Iran's leader. He pointed out to Gaza, and the description that he gave to Gaza was that it's the fortress of resistance. At the same time, he emphasized about, similar to what you just said about the occupied West Bank, that that is going to bring the enemy to its knees. And I think it's appropriate time for me to ask you about the most recent development that happened in Nablus, where the Israeli regime forces were really caught by surprise. And a couple things that were very unique in this operation was the increased volume of violence that Israel exercised, not only in terms of the regime forces, but also in terms of the equipment that was used, whether from firepower or from the air, where Apache helicopters were used for the first time in 2 decades. Also, another development that was praised by yourself and other resistance groups was the fighting capacity of the Palestinian fighters, where they used IEDs and brought harm and injured roughly about 5 to 7 Israeli soldiers. That in itself is very commendable. Tell us about that, and also if you feel that Israel obviously can't defeat Palestinians like before, and has resorted to increasing its manpower, its military equipment, and even resorting to fighting and killing Palestinians from the air.
توصيف سماحة القائد لأن غزة هي قلعة المقاومة هو توصيف دقيق.
Your description of Sayyid, the head of the revolution, as the fortress, describing Gaza as the fortress of the resistance, is very precise, since today Gaza is the strongest arm of the resistance against the Zionist enemy, despite the fact that Gaza is encompassed and surrounded and under a blockade. Still, it was able to build with all the factions to have the capability and to have a whole army of free men, and all the factions of the resistance are under this management with Hamas. Also, since we went to elections and we won the elections, we formed a cabinet headed by mostly Hamas. That was also a cabinet of resistance. So therefore, in 2006, and therefore the resistance has become stronger, has become bigger, and the resistance in Gaza has underwent many wars, and it has become stronger. Just last 2 years ago, we had the Sword of Al-Quds, also battle, which extended to the heart of the Zionist occupation entity, and drew very significant equation with the Israelis, as well as the avenging the free, the recent battle. So therefore, the resistance in Palestine, in Gaza specifically, is the guard of all of Palestine, and against any sort of confrontation that occurs with the Israelis every time they perhaps launch more adventures or foolish military campaigns against our people. So therefore, in the West Bank, also what Sayyid Ali Khamenei, also Ayatollah Khamenei, also said, he said this is something new. This was was surprising for the enemy. And he also spoke about what happened in Jenin when the Israeli occupation forces and the Israeli army went to raid Jenin. They thought that they are used to raiding and launching aggressions against Jenin in this camp. But this time, the Palestinian resistance fighters surprised the Israeli enemy with the ambush and the bombs that they had planted against the military vehicles, and they were able to target and hit and inflict direct casualties against the Israelis. And I believe that this was not a surprise as much as it was a path, a new transformation in the history of the resistance, in the confrontation with the Zionist enemy, that the land is even trembling under the feet of the enemy. It is no longer easy for them to come and raid and invade the cities and towns and to eat, to destroy and to kill. And they have a clear message that was sent to them by the Palestinian resistance fighters, and therefore they wanted to send the drones and in order to try to assassinate our leaders in Jenin of Islamic Jihad. But this was proof that they are no longer capable of entering the cities and the camp, and with that the people there have the spirit of youth, the spirit of resistance. And I believe that what is happening and what has happened in the West Bank with the direct issues, and we see that two of the Qassam brigades launched two heroic operations. They killed 4 settlers and injured 4 settlers, and this is proof that this is an open battle with the Israeli occupation forces, and that what we will see in the future would be more dangerous, more warning, would be even more threatening for the Israeli enemy.
When you take a look at the way that the tide has turned against Israel, it's kind of been a slow motion, and I'm talking about the world view. But we've seen that to have accelerated in the past year in terms of the anti-Israeli view and the pro-Palestinian view in terms of the Palestinian cause, and how, obviously, generally, how Palestinians are being violated by Israel. Now, needless to say, Iran has been a very staunch supporter of the Palestinian cause since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. With Imam Khomeini and his worthy successor, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, obviously describing Palestine as the most important issue of the Islamic world. Can you tell us how much that has contributed to the Palestinian cause being known worldwide? Because even as we speak, even within the U.S. and the U.S. establishment, in terms of their lawmakers, around 40%, based on the latest research that was done, lawmakers are now in favor of the Palestinian cause. So this anti-Israel stance and Iran's contribution to it to have changed the worldview, can you describe that for us, how you see it?
الجمهورية الإسلامية ومنذ أن انطلقت وانتصرت الثورة الإسلامية في إيران
the Islamic Republic of Iran, and since it was victorious as an Islamic revolution in Iran, it has a very significant stance in the political and cultural speech of the leaders in the Islamic Republic, whether it is the leader of the Islamic revolutions, Ayatollah Khamenei, God protect him, and all the officials in Iran. When we speak about the support from Iran to the Palestinian cause. We talk first of all about the political support, which is also represented by the fact that the Islamic Republic does not recognize an Israeli entity on the lands of Palestine. This is very essential. This also reflects on these positions of the Islamic Republic, of its diplomacy in the international scene, and on the international level we see that it is continuously by launching the speech of protecting the of standing against the oppression against the Palestinian people. It is with the independence and sovereignty of the Palestinian people and calls for the end of the occupation of the land of Palestine. So therefore this political speech is very significant and has not changed. And also, at the same time, the military support of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which it presents to the and gives to the Palestinian resistance, is very also essential and paramount, and has helped build the resistance in Palestine and in Gaza. The Islamic Republic has the biggest share in giving support and strengthening and increasing the strength of this power. It has also given funding to the resistance in Palestine, and therefore the support of our brothers in the Islamic Republic of Iran is something that we are grateful for, that we welcome. It is unconditional. Iran has never given any conditions to give support to the Palestinian resistance and has asked for nothing in return of this support and this assistance. Of course, this is a religious stance. This is a stance of faith. This is a political stance, and therefore we heard also from the leader of the revolution, this is Al-Quds. This is the cause of all the Palestinians. This is the first capital for Muslims, and God Almighty has said that He has blessed what the surrounding of Al-Quds, and therefore, God willing, we have also believe that this support that will not stop. It will continue, and it will even become more advantageous and will become greater in order to support the Palestinian cause. Of course, there is a change that we see in the Western societies, even within the American society. Israel is no longer this spoiled child for the United States or for the West. Israel is no longer this entity or this strong military machine that they need to give and serve, that all these Western countries give the support. The Western societies have actually become tired from the Israeli crimes and practices. We see that we have a reading of and we have studied the Western society, the American society. We see many study centers that we see that there are studies where there are youth within the Jewish lobby also that say we should not